Hello there. So I want to explain something very weird. It's a major thing in the story of me. It will be, I believe, a major turning point in Sleeper's wake. I'm the sleeper. I need to wake up. That's why I turned off Dragon Naturally Speaking, because I just said wake up. Okay. Anyway, I have a strange past, and I have a strange makeup of moving parts that I don't always understand. In fact, I've understood very little of it, but that's okay, because part of life is trying to figure out who you are and what you are, and how to work with your disabilities and how to work with your abilities and go on to do the things that you want to do to pursue happiness, yeah? So that's part of what I've been trying to figure out. I've been trying really hard to figure things out. I know that for a long time now I've retreated from the past, trying to forget it. Well, that's fine. Everyone does that. It's supposed to be good. But what you forget about the past really can get you. So I don't know. I've always kept one eye open regarding the past, and then regarding the future, I've not really created a future, or worked on a future, really put a lot of effort into some project toward a future, but instead have retreated to the now, the moment of now. And it's supposed to be great here. It's supposed to be great in the now. Only you just can't be anything but half-assed when you're in the now, because then you don't have money for bills, or, you got to think of a future. You got to build yourself some sort of future. You got to put it out there. You're creating your tomorrow, even though life is in you today. So, what a conundrum, right? Anyway, I've been trying to figure this whole thing out, and I have many ways of thinking that come down to conflicts, if you will. I'm going to go through a brief timeline, because last night I had, well, not even last night, I woke up and I was laying in bed, and I finally occurred to me what I've been doing in life and recently, and why I've not been going. I'm a thoughtful person. I'm a deep diver, but it doesn't seem that way to anybody who watches my actions, because I've not been doing many actions. I've not been setting the world on fire, I've not been following my own goals and my own passions, and what the hell. Yeah, I think I know what's been going on. Anyway, flashback to little Eric in the shopping cart, yes. And I used to try to freak out people in the shopping center, the supermarket. Mom would tell me this many times. I see some poor innocent, oh, what a nice little baby, they'd say to me, and I go like this, and they go, oh my, I guess it was a great prank, and I used to use acting to get a reaction out of people. It's supposed to be a high purpose in life to create an effect, and I was all about creating an effect. I did it a lot as I grew up. Most of the time, I was a sponge for knowledge, math and science. I would suck it in and, try to learn as much. And it's been helpful later in life in computers and stuff. When you build stuff, you want to have geometry. When you do computers, you want to be able to think algebraically. Math and science have been handy. So I really got into them. And the art that goes along with math and science is music. And music, in many ways, you're either doing it right or you're not doing it right. There's, at least at the beginner levels, you're doing it right or you're not doing it right. Because you're either playing the right notes or you're not playing the right notes. And then even if you play the right notes, you want to, as Harry Eichhorn used to say, you want to blow. And, you know, you want to blow that horn, you want to make a noise, you want to really create an effect, right? So I learned to really blow the horn. I can't say I was the most expressive player, artistic player. I would have liked to have taken it to that next level, but I had found another art, and that was drama. And drama had an immediate playback. I had already learned the creation of a plot to create an effect in magic. I was a young magician at age 5, magic kid under the Christmas tree. I could read, so I would learn to do these tricks and then do the tricks for family members, which was probably the worst thing, because siblings didn't understand the magic, and mom would always say, "Oh, that's wonderful, dear," and whatever, no matter how good, no matter how bad, not good feedback. My father would always try to figure out the trick, so he never gave me any feedback along the showmanship lines. It was terrible. I was doing magic, and it should have created lots of effect, and it didn't really, but I never gave it up. Anyway, so I had this showman in me, this young budding showman, but I was sort of a scientist as a showman. You do this and you get that, and you do the trick and it will appear to the person such as this is true or that is true when it really wasn't true, and that's a magical effect. So I learned it in terms of the effect, but later I learned how to finesse it and to be much more of a showman. But I'm jumping ahead. So I learned to be an actor and had some great success in high school. Some early success. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I could sing. So seeing as how I could carry a tune and had a decent voice, I was able to be propped up. And first show, freshman year, I became El Gallo, which was an important narrator role in the Fantastics. Didn't know what the hell I was doing, and hey, I got through it somehow, and those are some great songs. The show is an amazing show, and it creates a great effect. But somewhere in there, I finally connected, and I was trying to connect with marijuana for the longest time because, I don't know, I was boring. Life was boring. I wasn't having any fun. I really wasn't having any fun. I didn't have friends, didn't really know how to do friends, didn't have the social. And there I am and propped up in front of all these people, but I'm not a social person. So I thought, well, I could assume this persona and be the actor, and that would get me to social. It really didn't. So much so that the closest I ever got to being social with people in acting was actually when we were doing drugs, when we were smoking dope. I didn't know how to relate to people. On the one hand, I would always look down at them because they had no intellect, not any real intellect at all. They're kind of dumb as rocks in terms of knowing math or science or any of the hard skills. Even music was sort of a mystery to most of them, and not all. And I'm being very ungenerous, but part of my mind was, I always felt less than, so I needed to build myself up to feel more than. And there was more than enough material to do that with fellow actors. So that's what I was doing. They were fine. I sucked. And I was still using whenever I could. That never went away in college. That was always a part of college. It was there in the background, and I guess it is for a lot of actors, but for me, I should have approached the whole acting as more of a complete science than anything, and I tried. Okay, so I attended a very good school, and I guess I'll drop names here because then you can do the research if you wanted to. I learned the Sanford Meisner technique from William Esper at Mason Gross School of the Arts in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I was auditioned actually, and I got to be one out of a class of 30, one in a class of 30, and 600 auditioned. So I was very lucky in that regard that I got in. For whatever reason, I had an acting problem, and my acting problem was that I was watching myself too much. I was being too careful, to not letting myself go, sort of afraid of this reactive layer that is me. And of course, everything you do in this technique, this internal technique, was to unleash the reactive monster inside, controlledly, but use what you got, I had plenty, but oh man, could I not get out of my way? I was being careful. I'll never forget one of the most grief-stricken times in my acting career was when the teacher, in front of the whole class, of course, I was I would be able to do acting scenes in rehearsal and break down and cry through the whole scene and really do an amazing job, but it was only for me and the other actress in the scene to witness because there was nobody to watch. And then I come in and try to do that scene, and I was dry. I couldn't, bring the emotion that I could in rehearsal, and it was a very big problem. The teacher used to make comments like, "Why don't you just bring a giant mirror on stage with you, and then you can watch yourself completely and entirely?" I'm like, I didn't know what the hell or why. You see, the drugs had brought my awareness down. I needed that awareness, and it brought it down to the level where I just couldn't quite jump over the wall and get to where I was going. So, but I did have a triumphant time when the teacher was finally sort of being with me in the class. I was just frustrated. I'd done the scene over and over and done it well in rehearsal. And he even asked my acting partner, he does it in rehearsal. He's like, yeah, and I'm like, I broke down right on the spot in front of the class after a run through of the scene. I broke down and I was crying. Okay. But this wasn't emotion used in an imaginary. Anyway, it didn't matter. They primed the pump. He sent me out of the room. We did the scene again, and everything went 1,000,000% correctly, like it had in rehearsal. And I looked up at the end of the scene, and there were people in the audience, other actors and actresses, crying and sort of shocked by the whole scene because the whole thing made only an emotional sense. It didn't really make sense with just the lines, and the scene hit home for them, and that was the last activity, last scene of the last class of the school year, and I left on a high for that summer, and that was good. That was good, but I was an idiot. Anyway, part of the actor's training was to do these activities, and you have to really try to do something for a very good reason. And someone will come into the room and try to get you off your activity so they can get what they want. And the only way you can give them what they want is to be off your activity. So there's conflict, and there's a bunch of other ingredients, but it was difficult because I couldn't really do the things that I was purporting to do as an activity, because it would put me in danger. I would be, not guarded, and I might snap, but that was the whole point. Well, all of these lessons landed later. I got in a relationship with a woman who was supposed to be a theater person. She was in the technical side of things, lighting and stage designer. Turns out that during our relationship, I did more lighting and stage design than she did, but somehow during that whole relationship, the beast was unleashed because I was really trying to do things. It mattered to me to have a family. It really, really mattered. It mattered to me to be in a relationship correctly. Correctly? What the fuck? But yes, correctly. And that really, really mattered. And I was trying to be a magician. I was trying to, at some point, I started to try to be a magician. I was working before that as a scenery worker at Adirondack Scenic, building stage furnishings. And I later did special materials and vacuum forming and fiberglass, and I've done electrics, and I worked in the paint department. I really got the whole scenery building experience, always thinking in the back of my mind, well, I can turn this around and be a magician and use it in my magic. So, yeah. So I had gotten the bug to be a magician somewhere along the line in acting school, and had actually gone up in 1981 and 82 to try to score a job as a magician, and did finally in 81, with several disappointments before that, land a job as a professional magician. I did magic. I got paid. It was cool. It was really the best thing, because it set me up in my mind that I could be who I was and get paid for it and have a successful life. And it was the closest I ever got to making all that work. I was still using. I was still a druggie, but it wasn't. The magic became more important than the drugging, and that was good. That was good. I would catch a buzz every once in a while, I suppose, but it wasn't wake and bake. It wasn't all day, every day, like it got to be later. So that's all before the relationship. Got into the relationship and got through to 1989, and it took sort of a miracle to get me off of drugs. I was going very low. I was waking and baking. I was using pot all day, every day, all the time. It was necessary to be normal. A friend that I had met back in the winter of 1982 had come by and said, "Hey, can I? How you doing? Can I do some work around the place?" Like he just wanted some to help. And I said, sure. This guy was a big, scary guy, though. He was, I think he was arrested many times or something. Anyway, he worked around the place, and then when he finally demanded money, I was, what, really? That's what you're doing this for? So he wanted to go and he wanted money. But somewhere in that whole thing, that day, he let me know that there was this place called the Human Resource Center in Glens Falls, New York, and that stuck. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, I talked to someone. I'm like, oh, okay. If you have psychological problems, you talk to someone, and they help you out, I guess. So anyway, wasn't too long thereafter that I felt that I had psychological problems. Well, mostly because I wanted to kill myself. It was like nothing I was doing in life was really working. And it was misguided. I thought I wanted to kill the body, but I didn't really want to kill the body. There was some portion of me that I wanted to stop, and I didn't know what the hell it was, but I knew I felt bad, and I didn't want to feel bad anymore. And felt really bad, like down to the core of my being, like chemicals had come up to my nose, and as I smelled my life, it smelled like bad pot or something. I just didn't. Anyway, pot was not working anymore. It wasn't even getting me so I could feel normal. That probably had a lot to do with me wanting to end something. And so I remembered this human resource center, and maybe I should talk to someone. May as well, because I'm dead. I'm gone anyway. Doesn't matter. I've got nothing to lose. So I went off, and it turned out that the place was an anti-addiction service, part of the Glens Falls Hospital. And they took me in, and on that first day, I flushed pot down the toilet twice and cried bitter tears, and found out that I was what's known as a garden variety addict, and that was all news to me. Never thought there was something wrong with it, but then I definitely thought there was something wrong with being an addict, and that's who I was, but I had to grow to accept it. And I realized very quickly that I was doing this to save myself and save my family. I didn't want to lose my family. That my family was very important to me. My wife and my kids. And I got my head around it really quickly. I started going to meetings almost immediately. Might have been the day or the day after that first meeting. Anyway, I started doing meetings, and I was doing the Human Resource Center, and they had group sessions too. One of my best friends this life right now is a guy by the name of Bart, and he was there too. But he was there because he was court-ordered, not because he found any fault with his actions or what he was doing, and still doesn't. Well, good for him. That's not me. So, anyway, here's where the apathy sets in, I guess. The apathy of you're an addict and there's nothing you can do to change that is a pretty apathetic condition, and it doesn't change. I mean, you're actually working hard to accept that it doesn't change, and you try to do the steps, I guess, although I never really got very hard into the step 4 and beyond, where you make a list of all the wrongs you've created, because I couldn't bear up under it, to look at myself as the perpetrator of crimes, and I had to remain right. I couldn't be bad and wrong. Never really did it. I mean, I tried to, going forward, not do wrong, but the harder you try to be a magician and you're a family man, it doesn't really work. There were times that she would say, get a real job, and I'd be like, no, I know that this is the road for me, and I could have ended up in Vegas. I really could have ended up in Vegas, because I was later a builder of illusions, a designer of illusions, a performer of illusions, and I needed to get to the point, and the very stage I worked on in The Great Escape back in 94 and 95 was a stage from which a very famous Vegas magician used to perform once upon a time, and damned if I couldn't have followed. Brett Daniels is his name. I should have been able to follow, not him, but that career path. I could have done cruise ships. I could have gone from there to big stage productions, Vegas, in other words. I could have been a contender. Anyway, here's the thing. I got divorced. I was in the heyday of getting there. I was doing 5 shows a day, 7 days a week for 2 years in a row at The Great Escape. And the second year, I'd realized that rather than stop creating and say, oh, the show is killing me, I'm putting my same feet in the same footprints at the same time every day, day in, day out. Like the first year, I would say that, and it felt bad. I was hurting by the end of that first season, but I did it again. I went into and did a second season, but at the same time, I also had a night gig 3 to 4 times a week, and I did an hour-and-a-half illusion show in the Eric Conover Magical Dinner Theater, and wow, that was huge, and I was doing much better in that second year. And I guess my suppressive ex-wife saw me doing too well without her, because she was not a part of the show at this time. I hired people, and it was working with hired people. She couldn't have it, and she decided to scuttle the relationship, and it was never better than the point when she attacked, and just right at the heart of me. Because it was all for the family. It was all to get somewhere. It wasn't for the glorification of Eric, but I was doing magic. There I was, being a magician, doing the work. 5 shows a day, 7 days a week, and 3 to 4 hour-and-a-half illusion shows at night during the week. And it was all working swimmingly. I was making it work. It was amazing. A very good time. It was hard, but it was a very good time. And by that October, she had left. Hardest time of my life. Because, God, here it comes. Everything that was important to me was wrapped up at that time. Doing magic was important to me. And family was important to me. I'd lost the family, and there seemed to be nothing I could do. I knew she was wrong. I did that, and I later found out, yeah, she was being adulterous, carrying on an adulterous relationship. And she probably felt she needed rescue or something. Chose a knight in shining armor who happened to be the town drunk of an insignificant town north of there, and she picked the loser I wasn't going to become, and that I'd stopped being. She picked pretty well, but my trajectory was downward, and I jumped out of that mode and stopped being a druggie. And anyway, talk about a terrific apathy. She used child support to entrap me to not be a magician, basically. And it was that year that I wasn't back at the Great Escape, and the following year they sold it to Six Flags, and that job never was going to be. In fact, maybe a magician job that good was never going to be in that area where I had a family. But I had to stay in the area because I had 2 little kids and her, and no real income as a magician, and it became very bad. So the following year I did magic retail, and got myself ripped off by anyway, long story. It didn't go well. I didn't walk out of that situation with money. Following that, I got into insurance, selling insurance door to door. Did that for as long as I could stand it, and I was good at it. Was winning giant awards and bonuses and stuff, and it would have been a good living. It was. I mean, I was making pretty good money. Of course, it was all going to her, or much of it, most of it. I don't know. It was bad. Later went on to work in an office. A screensaver went there. Yeah, so anyway, a lot of apathy, a lot of crying all the time. All the time. And yeah, I never went back to drugs. So I was laid bare and didn't know how to proceed to happiness for myself, but I knew how not to proceed to degradé, which would have been the road with drugs. So I, rock and a hard place. There I was, living in a rock and a hard place. And the main thing, though, is that I didn't want to have my passions for things come to an uncontrollable emotional state where I'm screwing up bits of my life and relationships. And I made these decisions to not be passionate, and I forced myself to be normal and do normal jobs and not get into trouble again. I never thought I'd be in a relationship again, but time has a way of going forward, and I finally did make a decision that I always called the hardest thing I ever did, and it was very difficult, to pick up and move all my stuff, 2 24-foot trucks, 2 round trips from Glens Falls to Boston, where I am now. And I've basically been camping out here with my stuff, never really proceeding in life, having all the stuff to, all the shop tools. I have a shop in the basement, and I could build illusions again and get it all going again. And I always thought maybe I would. I had someone hold all my illusions that I had built, except for the ones that I brought with me. And I don't know, I haven't spoken to him. I'm sure they've been sold off or auctioned or tossed in the trash. Levitations, illusion designs that I built myself, and just so much work there. But I digress. Anyway, I've just been surviving. I've been hanging out in the now, not daring to go forward into a passionate future or create a passionate future, or giving up on happiness. And here's what I come to realize as of last night. I became the master of addiction when I realized that addiction was simply a very predictable, lumbering robot that was trying to get you. It kind of like just followed you around and tried to get you. But if you just could predict how it operates, then you could stay a few steps ahead of it, and you don't hang out in corners, and you make sure that you just have an escape route at all times. And you might get close, but it won't get you because you're smarter than that. I also realized at that time that your addictions, they are aware of you and your information and data. And I realized that part of the way that I tried to control my past and tried to control my now was to stay out of the situations that the acting exercises were designed to create. In other words, you have an activity, you're doing it hard, you have a goal, I abandoned activities and goals and passionate action. I abandoned all that. I wanted to keep it under control, keep the rap on it, make sure that nothing would happen. Don't unleash Eric. God, that should be bad, You'll yell at someone, or you'll put your hands around their neck, or you'll say things you don't mean. And life has been, I've tried very hard to keep things under control, and I've kept things under control. And you know what? That's not what's successful for me, is to keep things under control. As an actor, when I lost control, when I start screaming and yelling and cussing and doing all that, that's when I get the A+ in my acting class. When I start crying with grief uncontrollably, and when I start, when I'm angry or sarcastic or snarky or whatever the hell. Conflict. More conflict I could embrace in my life, the higher the grade. That was not the criteria that made relationships work. That is not the criteria that would make a good relationship work. It might have been the criteria for a show person, but magic was very, very controlled. I never was in a situation in magic where I had to lose control, and yet the very best magic that ever happened was when I lost control. Magician in Trouble was a tremendous formula, and the best magic show I ever did was when I got a young French girl who didn't speak one single word of English, but thought she could bullshit her way through it by nodding her head every time you asked her a question. So I tried to do a book test where an English word is picked out of a book, and instructions need to be followed, and well, the trick didn't work at all, but the comedy bit really did work. Magic was a passion. 1989 is when I began to be the clean and sober magician that I was, and so I worked in 90. That was the Oreo cookie magician in, I think, 91. 92 and 93 I did the Magic Forest till I couldn't put up with enough of Jack Gillette's bullshit, but it was great working for him. I worked for him 4 years of my life. He was my first professional magic gig. I would go back there today. I mean, I just would, because it's an opportunity to do magic and do it regularly. I like the Pines. I like the place. It's freaky, but the Tragic Forest I would go back to. And then 94 and 95 I did The Great Escape. She left me in October 95. I hung out for 3 years, almost to the day, until I finally just couldn't make living in a big old house by myself where the ghosts of my relationship and the happiest days of my life haunted me on a daily basis. I was not a good father. I was pursuing my career as best I could. I tried to keep myself under control from that point forward, but I was more emotional and pent up than ever, and I couldn't keep my emotion off of my kids, and the very rational Rosa won them over to the point of view that I was a loser. And I guess in many ways it was not an incorrect point of view. In terms of winning in this material universe, I am a loser. In terms of getting through and coming out the other side of in the spiritual universe, in my fight spiritually to learn about myself and to advance myself spiritually, I'm winning. Doesn't sound like I'm very dramatic or interesting right now, but I am. All that interest there is there. I mean, I'm still that interesting guy. I've been using, though, here's the big revelation, okay? I realized that I've been using, or my disease of addiction and reactive mind, if you will, has been using the information that I have about acting to make sure that I don't do things that would land me in a situation where I've lost emotional control. But also, very carefully, I have kept myself from landing in a situation where I'm doing anything passionate, anything that makes me happy, anything that creates a future that is good for both myself, my symbiotes, if you will, the people in my life, and humanity at large. The possibility of all that is lost because Eric is keeping himself in chains. And I guess I decided to do that. Certainly, I see, it's at this point I don't know whether my reactive mind is trying to keep me under control, or myself and trying to keep myself under wraps is making sure I don't get into a situation where the monster can come out. Anyway, it's all bullshit, because if I don't create my passionate future, I'm dead anyway. And that's where I've been. Dead anyway. I moved here in 1998. I did desktop publishing. I started to do my mother's books. Hey, if I couldn't do my own goals, I'd at least embrace someone else's goals. And I worked on her goals really hard, but I ended up working on her house, and that was her goals, and built a log cabin with her builders, but then finished it inside and out. Not one stitch of sheetrock in the entire place, and I did a hell of a job, and I made some money. I made enough money to get myself along the path that I had chosen to, and still choose, to get myself handled. But I put myself in this self-made prison of no passion, no doing crap in the moment of now, and working for a future that matters. I've been hanging out. I've been camping in the now in life. The actor's information. I'll bet you now I could do those exercises, and I bet you now that I could know when I'm actually doing something or not, and I bet you that I would be a very good actor at this point, because I would do it deliberately. Certainly I've gone out there and fell in love and got my heart broken a few times, and look at this body. Look at this chubby hand. Ooh. Aaron. Hey, look. Oops, sorry. That's a logo I created. Here it is. Ooh, nice. And I wear it on my shirt as well right now. Ergo Robotic Solutions, my buddy Bart, from all the way back in the days of group therapy at the Human Resource Center, working with him and for him, and his partner Jerry. I like Jerry. Jerry's rationality. He's if money and making money were the only thing on earth and didn't produce such a conflict, I wouldn't have an issue or any illusions. But it seems like I'm always choosing between money and passion, and it could be the same thing. It could work. It could definitely go that way. Anyway, that's my story, but in a way that I think lets me choose passionately for the future, because you know what? I realize what I've been doing now. I've been using the actor's improvisation formula to keep from getting into situations where I'm risking anything, including becoming a monster. And Yeehaw! Wow, what a life I'm having. Anyway, I've had a lot of help along the lines. My girlfriend Rosary has put up with a lot. She's been waiting for me to come of age, I guess, and figure it out and get on with it. And poor girl has been kept waiting a long, long time. She's already put in more time than Rosa did, my ex-wife, and she's invested, you know. She's invested. What will I do with this? It remains to be seen, but I don't think I can reserve passions in the now for the purpose of making sure I don't become the monster I don't want to be. So, I'm talked out. I don't have anything more to say, but something has changed. I feel that something has changed. The entire time that I was doing this, I have, of course, an image of myself doing video. And I've stuck to the communication. I've not looked at myself, except a couple glances. I had notes down here when I was looking down here, because I wanted to explain this inability to get passionate so that I can handle it. I don't want it to be an inability. I want to be able to get on with it, to unleash the person that I know I am. And it may be too little too late, but I'm going there. And this is the first video log that I've made, and I'm going to go from pathetic to something else. It's better to have tried and failed than it is to have not ever tried and never failed. I think it's going to be okay from here on out. I do. Thanks for listening. Wow, you listened a long time. 47 minutes and 49, 50, 40, yeah. Would you call it 48 minutes? I will. Have a good day.